Vanquish is an infinite ice physics simulator released in 2010 for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. It's a fast-paced, third-person, cover-based shooter where you use your super special power suit to slide around the battlefield and activate a bullet time mode. Now that right there is a pretty unique and interesting mechanic for a relatively stagnant genre, but the folks at Platinum decided they'd actually follow that up by making everything fucking awesome. I said it was cover-based, but the game actually lowers your score for using cover too often. It wants you to go balls to the walls batshit insane with how you handle combat situations. I genuinely had trouble picking scenes out to showcase for this video because the entire game is filled with you pulling off crazy and amazing stunts. Ladies and gentlemen, at last we found a game that isn't foremost a piece of shit. Fucking finally! On top of your extravagant mobility, the game is also filled with a decent selection of weapons, some familiar and others that are completely unique and creative. You're given 3 slots for weapons. Picking up the same weapon replenishes your ammo supply, and picking up a weapon while you're on full ammo will increase its stats. This may be my favorite weapon upgrade system I've ever seen in a game. It's totally flawless. Weapon containers are scattered all over the place and you can easily swipe them up during the heat of battle, or after the fact you can casually look through them. It's not some stupid crafting system that breaks up the game or a dedicated upgrade tree. It's simple, easy, and completely fluid. It employs this level of strategy where you have to consider whether you should pick up a new weapon and start to upgrade it, or whether you should just keep your current one and continue to upgrade that one instead. Alternatively, you could swap it in and out again for a particular enemy so you can effectively use one weapon while remembering to re-grab your old one in order to keep upgrading it throughout the game. Swapping out guns in the middle of a battle is extremely satisfying, whether it's from your on-hand arsenal or whatever you find on the ground. The fluidity of it all just makes you feel like an unrelenting badass. Every enemy is designed with a specific weak spot, usually the head, and they all act in completely different ways. How you boost through the battle and how well you manage your allies keeps every single fight fresh and exciting. Almost every altercation has multiple ways to go about it. You can boost your way from cover point to cover point, pick and choose which enemies you want to kill first, consider which weapons to use for a given battle, and on top of all that you have to keep your mobility and bullet time meter in check. So your boost/bullet time meter is a really great inclusion, not just for the abilities it brings, but because it's a great way to punish the player for trying to tank through enemies or abuse their speed. Taking too much damage instantly triggers your bullet time, which forces you to either fight or fly to cover. Whenever your meter empties, it triggers overheat, which slows the meter regen and your running speed, relinquishes your boost and bullet time, and leaves you vulnerable to death, which consequentially will lower your gun rankings. There's just so much that you have to keep in mind and so many ways to go about a fight that you can actually play through the game multiple times and learn new, more efficient ways to kill the enemies, and there are so many enemies. It's very rare for a game to throw a tough enemy in my way, and my excitement actually overcomes my dread, let alone when it throws 2 of them at me. This part of the game just really stands out to me. It's not uncommon for a game to recycle a boss later on as a regular enemy. Usually it's meant to show the player how well they've advanced or how much more powerful they've become. But Vanquish pulls this off in a way that's just so much better. Because you can actually see the first one before you walk into it. So since you've fought this thing before, you can confidently move forward, and then it throws the second one at you and just drops you in to fend for yourself. Since your weapons are really the only thing that can be upgraded, it's your skill as the player that's put to the test. It's brilliant. I fucking love it. The entire game takes place in this cylindrical space colony, which is inhabited by nothing but 80 million killer Russian robots. But despite sounding like a bland set piece like it is in other video games, it actually provides varied and unique areas for each and every point in the game. Sometimes the bloom is a bit overbearing, but overall the game looks incredible despite its 720p resolution. It's mind-blowing just how many set pieces they managed to cram into this game. None of them seem to go by too quickly or outstay their welcome. There's a bit where you inch your way through a dark tunnel, there's a part where you have to shoot across 2 rail cars, there's a bit where you need to battle up a slope while stuff is falling down at you. There's a part where you battle across a collapsed bridge, a part where you have to destroy a huge cannon. The whole game is just chock full of varied objectives that seldom ever repeat, and if they ever do, they usually have a nice twist to them. I was expecting like this boring shooter where you just walk forward shooting whatever's in your way, and maybe once in a while there'd be like this little cool movement, but no, it's the entire game. The whole fucking thing is just amazing. It's a bit weird that every part of the colony is filled with bulwarks and turrets and stuff, but you can easily like write that off as a defensive measure they took before the attack, which actually brings me to the story. The game is very clearly set in the future where Big Mama is president, Killer Croc is the lieutenant colonel, Lawrence Nelson is the main hero, and the main villain is Iron Man. All of the characters are about as standard and generic as you can get, which sometimes feels like it has a so bad it's good style to it. Burns is a hardened war veteran with more loyalty to his country than his own men, and Sam is a snarky, gruff VR veteran whose morality is as white as his suit. Essentially riding with a gun. The characters are fairly so-so, but the actual story of Vanquish is complete shit. This Russian organization burninates San Francisco with a giant microwave beam, and the United States retaliates by attacking the space station which houses the weapon. Also, the Russians kidnapped this completely forgettable scientist guy so that he could stop them.
There is much I want from Mr. Kennedy.
Thank God. I stopped it in time.
I don't know. Anyway, from the beginning of the game to the very end, the main objective is the same. Stop Cyber Putin. All the story in between is just banter from Balthier and Zadornov after they swallowed a couple helpings of gravel and activated the rock tumblers hidden inside their throats.
Miss me, sweetheart? Jesus, you? I liked you better when I thought you were dead.
I liked you better when I didn't have to hear your shit. Let's go.
The ending of the game is wholly disappointing. There are a couple of twists at the end which are entirely predictable. The game sets itself up for a sequel, but the lack of any real closure just makes it feel more bitter than sweet. Especially considering that the sequel is probably never coming, which is a shame. I won't spoil it, but if you ever play it, be sure to set your expectations extremely low. The game is at its highest point of tension, and then it just ends. So, while the story itself is boring and doesn't really lend itself to what you're doing throughout the game, it's up to the gameplay itself to carry your interest through the 7-hour campaign, and it does so in spades. All of the cutscenes in the game consist of showing you the next big thing you need to blow up, while Sam and Burns have a contest to see who can lose their voice the fastest. Everything else is explained in gameplay itself, or during these short intervals where you just walk and listen. Vanquish knows that it's a game, first and foremost, and it's clear that everything about the game is either meant to assist it, or get out of its way as quickly as possible. If you go into this game solely for its story, you'll be disappointed by how much fun you're having with the actual game itself, and also because there is no story. It's super fast with super tight gameplay, incredibly fun and varied boss fights, great set pieces, and designed with sheer enjoyment from beginning to end. While it may be a bit on the short side, it's well worth it for just how damn good the game is throughout. It's incredibly easy to come back to over and over again, and is a simple game to jump in and jump out of whenever you feel like without having to remember any kind of narrative, and a selection-based tutorial for a quick and simple refresher course. Performance-wise, it keeps a steady 60 frames per second throughout, rarely ever dropping except during massive explosions, at which point you've already won anyway, so it doesn't really hinder your own performance. Apart from those occasionally choppy drops and a subpar story, which clearly never mattered anyway, Vanquish is one of the most well-designed and purely fun games I've ever played from 2010. Man, Platinum really loves closing helmets, don't they?
Hit hard and make him regret it.